Welcome back to the Brock Campus Conservative Podcast. Tonight, Luca, Patrick, Nolan, Cole, and Josh will be joining us to have a free-flowing discussion about the future of the Conservative Party in terms of affiliation and policy prescription. I will now encourage everyone to introduce themselves.
Hello, everybody. My name is Luca Batista.
Hello, everyone. I'm Nolan.
Hi, everyone. I'm Patrick.
Hey, guys. I'm Cole.
Hi, guys. I'm Josh.
Thank you, everyone. We will now transition into the first topic. So for topic one, we are going to be discussing, with the pandemic slowly coming to a close, the federal election coming close, what should the Conservative Party heavily promote to ensure continued progress towards a renewed sense of normalcy and a strong economic recovery? Such things could include economics, social, political, international, diplomatic, educational, healthcare, industry, or even tourism sectors.
All right. I think personally, the Conservative Party, they should really focus on promoting economic growth, particularly in the industries of tourism. Considering that under the Trudeau government, those, at least from what I've read, those industries have taken an absolute beating during the pandemic and even before the pandemic. And if you think about it, it is those industries that truly drive the economy of Canada today. And without those industries, if they stall, the rest of the economy is going to stall, as what's seen with the numerous factory closures, with the numerous plants going under, with the numerous tourist closures, the border being closed still. And that has caused a problem for pretty much millions of people across the country, losing jobs, losing homes, losing their lives, metaphorically, and unfortunately for some people, literally speaking. Yeah, so last week, the Conservative Party should really focus on economic growth, particularly in the industrial sector of the economy and the tourist sector of the economy.
Yeah, you're definitely right, Luca. That's important. I work at a service center near Niagara Falls, so I've actually seen a little bit of tourism, but it's mostly within the province. Like people are traveling from like Brampton, Toronto area towards Niagara Falls. What I think the Conservatives could really gain off of is capitalizing off of these lockdowns and curfews by trying to set some sort of mandate that we can't have lockdowns or curfews, because Liberal and Conservative alike, people are tired of these. Like, we're ready to move out of this. So I think if we try to capitalize off of that, that could really help our results in the election.
When I was a delegate at this past year's Conservative Convention, I got the chance to ask our leader, Aaron O'Toole, a question, and I asked him what he felt was the greatest issue facing Canada in this upcoming election, and what he felt is a big issue heading out of this pandemic. And he told me, which I'm inclined to agree with, we need to get the economy back to normal, and a big part of that is getting spending back to normal. There have been a lot of bailouts. There have been a lot of payouts to people. There's been a lot of government handouts. And people's lives are changing. They're getting used to living different lives. Some people have lost their jobs and instead have maybe become, somewhat reliant maybe on some of these benefits while they're trying to find new careers. So we need to focus on getting the economy back to normal and getting these jobs back and running so that people can get to work and that we can rein in this emergency runaway spending. Because once we do that, we can get the budget back to where we want it to be, and that will allow us to then start investing in these other sectors such as healthcare and industry and production.
I'd like to jump in here on what I believe, Cole, what you said. What about the lockdowns? Now, I agree with you that they have to end. We eventually have to get out of it. But the problem is with that is that we just can't do what the People's Party says and end the lockdowns and forget about it. We gotta make sure, as what the Premier of Ontario says, Doug Ford, we have to make sure we open up, and we want to open up, but we gotta do it safely. We gotta do it. And we got to do it smart. We just can't say, virus is over, move on, open up, we'll be fine. Because if we do that and do what the People's Party does, and even a few other parties, we're going to just end up back in step one and basically end up locked down again. We're just going to go through a constant cycle of being locked down, open back up, locked down, open back up. And we really don't need that, because that would just make our economy extremely more volatile. And that just may cause pretty much a complete economic collapse. Now, most economists I read said that that's highly unlikely, but they did say that there's a slight chance for that if the lockdowns keep going and if we keep going in the cycle we should. So at the end of the day, we need to end the lockdowns. We have to, but we have to do it as Ontario is doing it, and pretty much as the rest of the provinces are doing it, and even the rest of the roads doing it. We guys do it safely, smartly, and effectively.
I mean, yeah, I completely see where you're coming from here, but on the other hand, we've slowly been researching more treatments for COVID. Like, I can't remember the exact pronunciation. It was like intermectin or intervectin or something along those lines. It was an antifungal treatment that actually treated COVID quite well. And we've started to realize that. Unfortunately, our government isn't currently using that, but we should definitely be looking into using that so we can end these lockdowns. It's just because Health Canada hasn't really approved it yet. Not to mention with all the vaccines. Like, sure, we're still not in an amazing position, but I think that we're in a reasonable enough position.
I was going to say, I think the biggest thing, especially for the Conservatives, we really do have to focus on opening up. But again, it does have to be in that smart, actually like science-backed manner. Other than that, I would say coming out of the pandemic, when there most likely will be a federal election, like everyone's calling it, that there will be one. I would definitely see Aaron O'Toole having to promote himself as a, I guess, sensible, moderate figure.
But like just piggybacking on what Luca said about making sure we open up responsibly and making sure like the last year and a half hasn't been like a complete waste of staying in lockdown to like make sure we don't go into lockdown again. I think it's important for Ontario. And so like just keep on that plan and hopefully open up soon when it's like we're making sure the cases stay low every day because we don't want them to jump back up.
What policies and ideas should the federal Conservatives support to regain voters while ensuring the People's Party of Canada does not gain significant traction to segregate that right-wing vote?
Yeah, so one of the things is that especially conservatives in Canada and people just not conservative but just on the right economically have to realize in Canada is that the Conservative Party, as time is beginning to change, that they're going to have to become a big tent party, and a part of that is appealing to Toronto or suburban votes, if not Quebec votes as a whole. And I think the balancing act that Aaron O'Toole will have to do, whether or not he actually has the ability to do this, is to be pro-oil while also being an appealing figure for Torontonians, because there's that separation from those two voter groups, and I think that's going to be the biggest thing. Another thing too, the federal Conservatives, I mean, there's so many winning issues that I don't think balancing the budget gets people excited. I'm sorry, like it's not an exciting topic. If anything, you can go on about Bill C-10, you can go on about all these measures, the vaccine passports, all this stuff going on, that those are winning issues in Canada. But for some reason, the Conservatives just aren't picking up these issues at all. So I think they're going to have to get more creative for that. But a part of it will be too, and this is depending on how you see or feel about it in Canada, to win a federal election, and this is happening in a lot of the Western world, to win a federal election, you will need to have, at least in some shape or form, a climate change plan. Like, it's depending on how you feel about it, if you're on the right, left, whatever, it needs to happen if you even want to get into a minority party setting. And that's why Aaron O'Toole has been doing lip and mouth service about it. Whether or not he'll actually implement his plans, different story. But again, he's doing it to win the Toronto vote and the Quebec vote, and that's why he's been working with Premier Legault and all these other like Quebec-based groups, because he's trying to win those votes while also being pro-oil. Like, you see him jogging in a I love oil and gas shirt on Twitter. Like, it's this balancing act that the Conservatives are going to have to play, and a part of that is expanding the party, which he did talk about in the party conference. It was not well received, but I think a lot of people are just going to have to wake up and realize. So.
While I agree with your point that this would appeal to Toronto, unfortunately, this is also going to lose us votes to the PPC. I feel like there's other methods he could take to try his best to appeal to Toronto. Although the climate change is a good idea to appeal to Toronto, it'll lose us votes to PPC, and we're going to lose votes out west as this hurts the West. which the West is kind of slowly getting fed up with conservatives. Not to the extreme point where they're sick of the liberals, but they're slowly starting to be a little pissed off by conservatives.
I think that he doesn't necessarily have to create the Conservative Party into like a Big Ten party. Say like I don't know if anybody who's listening knows about it. The Five Star Movement in Italy. They're a very Big Ten party, but I don't think he needs to do that. I think it's possible to maintain that center right to right wing base that the Conservatives have had pretty much since their inception. But I think that they have to incorporate elements of, say, climate change, elements of saying pro-oil, elements of saying the things that Nolan have said into like a center-right, right-wing version that center-right and right-wing voters in the country who are usually conservative will understand and will comprehend and will vote for. And I get it too about the whole Toronto thing. Now, this is a problem also in Vancouver. It's a problem also in Montreal. It's this big urban rural divide. It's in Canada, and arguably it's worse. It's the divide here is even worse here than it is in the States, because of course different electoral systems, different politics, etc., etc. But yeah, so that's pretty much what they have to do. They really have to perhaps not go into a Big Ten party, but model the policies they want to model to win votes in the cities and to maintain votes in the suburbs and in the country, while modeling those policies in like a center right wing vision, and not have to transform into a big tent party and pretty much ruin the very reason for the Conservative Party's existence, or one of the reasons anyway.
Yeah, I was just gonna say too, a lot of people talk about the PPC, and I do not see them as a threat for rural areas. And the biggest reason I don't see them as a threat is because of their stance on supply management, or what Maxime Bernier calls the dairy cartel. No farmer in good conscience of his business and his life's work is going to vote PPC thinking that Maxime Bernier will actually benefit him, right? The supply management system benefits farmers here, makes American business anti-competitive. It's protectionism. But what it is that it keeps farmers happy with the Conservative Party, because the Conservative Party has taken the stance that they will protect supply management. In fact, every political party has taken the stance that they will protect supply management. The PPC is the only one that is against it. So to say that they're a threat in the rural area, maybe in BUs or in certain Quebec areas, non-farming agricultural lands, you might see a riding get 10-20%. But to say that like the PPC is a flat out vote split, it isn't the same as what you would imagine. Like in the last election, I think the PPC costed the Conservatives 4 seats federally, not enough to actually swing, right, the actual election itself to Andrew Scheer. So to call them a threat, not really. If anything, they're going to be like the right-wing version of the Green Party. Literally polar opposites, have X amount of support. It's just a cabinet reshuffling. That's all they really are. And it's Maxime Bernier being angry he lost his leadership position. That's all I see them as. So
yes and no. As of right now, they're like that. But you have to realize there are some areas like the demographic we live in. For anyone tuning in, the demographic that we live in is about maybe 10% farmland and like 90% suburbs. So a demographic like this, we're traditionally heavily conservative, but if the conservative voter base starts to become a little bit annoyed with the Conservative Party, they might switch over to the PPC, and at that point, it could become a threat. And it's really hard to say if they would be like the right-wing version of the Green Party until after this election. I think this election will be the best judge of the traction of the PPC, personally.
I like some of the points that Luca and Nolan have brought up about our strategy heading into this election. We really need to look at what's worked for us in the past and what hasn't, and we need to adapt to how the Liberals are trying to outsmart us. So we know that obviously some of our, economic and pro-Canadian industry policies, those are getting us votes in Alberta and Saskatchewan. Things like that obviously need to still be in the platform. We can look to tweak them a bit, obviously. You always need to be moving forward. But things like that, those are getting us our core voter base. And then, like Nolan said, there's issues that this election is going to be won and lost over, and there's things that are going to be always in the news. Things like climate change, and even now there's, more calls for things like indigenous issues and policies regarding those. We need to come up with smart policies in issues like that are in the news and that people in urban centers really care about. So I feel like if we can stick to our guns, or sorry, no, cut that out. I don't want to say gun. If we can stick to our main strategy and appeal to the West, but then at the same time also come up with a strong environmental policy, but that's also pro Canadian oil, pro resource, I think that that's the kind of plan that we're going to need to win this.
Yeah, I think another good idea would be running off of this whole C10 thing. If it does end up passing through Senate, a lot of the population is upset with C10, and reasonably so. I think a really good thing for the Conservative Party to run off of would be the repealing of Bill C10.
I mean, yeah, Bill C10 is definitely going to be the most controversial one. And I would say, again, the biggest issue with the Conservatives when it comes to like moving into urban centers, I mean, Bill C10, they can obviously use that as a political club against the Liberals and NDP and Greens, right, in Ontario, and even against the Bloc in Quebec to a certain extent, because Quebecers do support Bill C10 because it promotes Quebec content. So the Conservatives are really going to have to play a really dealthy hand. They can either go all in on Toronto and hope to get seats in Toronto, or they can keep their 10-seat base in Quebec and then shuffle that around. Because if you remember in 2006, I believe it was either 2006 or 2011, Stephen Harper was he was elected with 10 seats in Quebec. That's how many seats we have right now. So it's a shuffling act. But when it does come to the whole climate change issue, and this is why I don't understand why the Conservatives aren't promoting this more. Use capitalism. Like it's a conservative party. It's pro-capitalism, obviously. Promote it, create incentives. I don't see how like they're dropping the ball on this. And there definitely is a lot of boomer conservatives in the party that just don't understand it. And especially with Canada's relatively young population, I believe the average age is like 38 to 40. You really have to consider that. So it's weird. We're in a millennial country. That's what it is. And we can't be, going off of what we see in America based off evangelical Christians, because that's what a lot of conservatives think what Canadians want. But you have to be pragmatic at the same time. So again, what Patrick said, what Luca said, and even a little bit what Cole said, it's all a balancing act. So
in terms of also issues that really ignite the voters, there's cracks in the Liberals' platforms in that they're not untouchable, they're not impervious. For example, the Liberals just voted down a private member bill, Bill C-269. This bill was to amend the Fisheries Act in order to make it illegal to dispose of raw sewage in Canadian waterways. Talk about being hypocritical. They try and brand themselves as a party for the environment, yet they vote down a bill that prevents you from dumping raw sewage. So just like that, that's a crack in their platform that we can expose and that we can try and work off of and promote our environmental plan instead.
yeah, I mean, one of the biggest things too is what the Conservatives can use this as a political club is that they can use that in the Atlantic. The Atlantic is super pro-environmentalism because that's what they run off of, especially a place like Prince Edward Island, where the Green Party is the official opposition on a provincial level there. You can use that as a club, and you can use that to say, look, they don't actually care, especially when it comes to the fisheries and lobster, I guess, fishery. I don't know the actual name of it, but the lobsteries, I guess. When it comes to that, raw sewage will destroy the environment there. So if you can show that, hey, listen, we'll protect this, right? A basic level, climate protection plan, that could win over some voters. So it's just, again, they really need to think about these.
I think personally, before I move on here, what you guys said about the Atlantic provinces, personally, whenever I talk to people about, whenever they ask me, for example, or whenever I'm in discussion, how could the Conservatives win? I always say to people, at least in my experience, they have to get the Atlantic provinces because, in my opinion, if they get the Atlantic provinces plus the West, if they maintain the West, maybe a few seats in Ontario and Quebec, they're going to win the election. Because I know from my research and looking up stuff that while the Atlantic provinces are heavily environmentalist, and because that's pretty much what their economy is, especially say PEI, not so much Nova Scotia too, a little bit Newfoundland as well. Um, they're also socially more conservative, more right wing socially, because of course they have a heavily heterogeneous genus. I don't know how to say it. Population, and that is what they have to focus on. They really have to focus on that social conservatism that's heavily followed in the Atlantic provinces, while also appealing to their more economic and environmental side, which is a little bit more liberal, which is exactly why the Liberal Party has been dominating the Atlantic for the last couple of decades. So, to basically summarize the discussion, what everybody said, they have to focus on the Atlantic provinces, and if they get the Atlantic plus maintain the West plus gets a little bit in Quebec and Ontario, they'll easily beat Trudeau, they'll crush Singh, and they'll make Maxime Bernier look like a joke.
The only problem with the Atlantic provinces is that the Liberals premiers there, the Liberal premiers, they did a really good job with like the Atlantic bubble and stuff. So then they had a really good response to COVID, and now they're like less locked down than we are. So it's a little harder to get them to then vote conservative after the Liberals did a really good job at getting them in the bubble and locking them down from the rest of the country.
In the event the Conservatives were unsuccessful at the next federal election, should the CPC and the PPC merge to amalgamate the right-wing vote? Why or why not? Is the PPC too right-wing to support some of Aaron O'Toole's more progressive conservative ideals? Or could these two right-wing parties coexist under the same umbrella once again?
I think, personally, I'll start off here. I think they shouldn't merge. Two reasons why. One, in my opinion, I think the PPC are a little bit too, not a little bit, very, way not too nationalist for the Conservative Party, because one thing that really makes me get turned off by the PPC is that they want to eliminate multiculturalism. And I get like they want to promote Canadian culture, I get it. But the problem is by limiting multiculturalism, that's basically telling everybody who's not like eighth generation Canadian to say that your culture can't be accepted here. I'm sorry, you have to be Canadian or essentially get lost or go hide. And this is coming, especially for me personally, who was raised in a heavily ethnic background. That like nationalistic thing, anti non-Canadian culture thing, is this a really big turnoff? And I think that's going to make the PPC lose votes. Actually, if something else doesn't, I think that will. And I've read a few comments on social media say agreeing with me. Even people who support the PPC have said that taking multiculturalism away or heavily discouraging it is going to hurt the PPC in the long run, which is why I think the first reason why the PPC cannot merge back with the Conservatives, because they're just too nationalistic. Racist, a bit too far, but nationalistic, yes, they are. The second reason why, and I'll make this one bit quicker, is because of their immigration and gun laws. Now, personally, I think what they want to do with gun laws and basically lift a lot of them is a bad idea because, of course, even with Trudeau's gun ban recently, there's still gun violence. You still hear on the news, especially in major cities, somebody gets shot here, somebody died there, somebody got, I don't know, mass shooting happened. That's the problem. We need maybe not overly excessive gun control like the Trudeau's want, but we can't have like laissez-faire gun control like the PPC want. We gotta do something in the middle to maintain the safety of Canadians while also somewhat appeasing all the gun owners. And also to conclude my point, I know it's being again a bit long, my apologies, is the immigration. The PPC wants to cut down immigration by, in my opinion, way too much. I think they only want 50,000 people in, or I don't know how much. I think that's too little. That's basically being discriminatory. I know this is a bit of a liberal word, but discriminatory against immigration. I fully support that we have to support people here in Canada who are down on their luck and who are broke and who are on the streets because they need support before immigrants do. But at the same time, we just can't fully cut off immigrants from coming here and trying to live a better life for themselves and achieving their dreams at home in war-torn countries or whatever they can accomplish.
Now, I don't agree with some of the points you made, Luca, but ultimately I have the same idea as you that they honestly should not merge. But my reasoning for that is because I believe that there should be we should be able to show the government what we'd like to see. It's nice that there's not just one major right-wing party now that there's two major right-wing parties with differing ideals. So every single vote towards another party can kind of show the government what we would value.
Yes and no. It's nice to have like, multiple parties that represent, but at the same time, this isn't, sunshine and fairy tales. This is politics, right? If the opposite side is vote divided and they can't actually conjure up enough votes within parliament, like voting in person matters, voting for your representative, but the representatives vote, that riding's vote in parliament that's going to vote on a bill matters a heck of a lot more. So I think to actually say that the PPC and this conservative should merge, I don't agree with that. If anything, I think if the PPC does not show substantial results, and I mean substantial, I mean like win one seat, right? Like if they don't win at least like 1 to like 4 seats, then they're going to be written off as a fringe party. Like I don't see them as a threat long term. If anything, I just see this as another like scar in the conservatives like history in Canada. So to actually say that they're a threat is a little too generous to call them a threat. Like they can definitely, like they did cost 7 ridings or 4 to 7, I believe, but I just don't. It's just not appealing as a whole. So I mean, I might be wrong. They could be a greater threat than what, you know what I mean, the conservatives and even I'm playing on. But to actually say that they can win an election or force the conservatives into a third party stance with like the liberals and God forbid the NDP as this opposition, like I don't see that. That's like nightmare scenario. That's way off from the truth. I was going to say though, Maxime Bernier is going to be just as relevant as the Social Credit Party in Alberta was in the early 30s and 50s, right? Like they're not gonna be what a lot of people think they're going to be. I think it's just a movement. Also, the Conservative Party of Canada is kind of having an identity crisis, and it's because of this. The Conservative leaders, statistically, you know what I mean, like Operation Cactus that came out, the Conservatives spent like 170 grand to just crush Bernier in the last election. But either way, I just don't see them as a threat long term, and if anything, I can definitely see the party just completely collapsing, and then, well, that leaves one option, and that's the Conservative Party of Canada. But generally, just as a whole, it's a prick, right? A cactus, a prick.
In terms of a merger, no, I don't think we should do one. And the main reason behind that for me is like, if you Google Maxime Bernier right now, what's the main thing that pops up? That he got arrested at an anti-lockdown rally in Manitoba. Do we need someone like that back in the party? Probably not. That's garnering a whole lot of negative publicity that we can easily do without. I think that being said, we can maybe try and win back some of their supporters. If maybe some of their supporters have gone to them because they've been disappointed with us in the past elections, that's totally a viable option. I think also a good way to deal with them is if we as a party perform better, if we can win the next election, that will likely probably win back a lot of the support that we've lost to the People's Party, because those people who have been disgruntled with the Conservatives' lack of success will see that we are generating more success and that their vote can help us maintain that success. So in terms of a merger, no, we shouldn't do one. And I also think in terms of our plan for how to beat them, I think it's stay the course, focus on the target currently, that's defeating Justin Trudeau in this next election. And if we can be successful at that, I think then we should also be successful at dealing with the People's Party.
Yeah, like agreeing with what Patrick said. I think if people see that the polls are close between the Conservatives and the Liberals, most of them won't vote for the People's Party just because they don't want to like throw away their only chance to beat Trudeau. And I think they'd rather a conservative government than another Trudeau one. So I think we should be good as long as we keep polls close and keep like the people pretty happy with the Conservatives. and like distance herself from the PPC, and because they're still like not the best situation or like the best option for Canada moving forward, and they have a lot of like more radical ideas that probably shouldn't be in effect.
I would just like to inform everybody who's listening that Maxime Bernier, if I remember, he didn't even win his own riding in 2019. I don't think he did. I remember he lost. And that just shows you that, as I think Nolan or Cole said, that their goal is to just get at least one seat. And if they get one seat, then that's pretty much winning an election for them. Because if your own party leader who broke off himself from his former party can't even win his own riding, that shows you that your party is kind of, if not completely, a joke, and will remain a joke, like say the Rhinoceros Party was back in the early 2000s.
Sorry, if I'm not correct, though, the Rhinoceros Party completely intended on being a joke, right? I think
Yeah,
the PPC
they were,
party,
but that's the
yeah,
whole point.
the PPC party is actually coming out here with a legitimate platform trying to win. The Rhinoceros Party was repealing the law of gravity. That was their platform.
I think that's the point, though. Like that they're a joke and they shouldn't be considered too like
Yeah,
seriously.
yeah. The Rhinoceros Party was trying to satirize, or satirize. I'm not entirely sure, but yeah. Anyways, they were trying to do that to politics.
Thank you so much for joining us tonight. That wraps up our discussion about the future of the Conservative Party. Feel free to come back soon to watch another episode of the Brock Campus Conservatives podcast. For now, stay safe, stay well, and we will catch you soon. Have a great night, everybody.